Welcome to the Board of Education Board meeting. I would like to call the meeting to order. Before we do that, tonight we are using the closed captioning feature. The captioning will also be visible on YouTube live stream, and I probably have just spoken too fast for them to capture that. So for those speaking during the meeting, please speak clearly so the closed captions are as accurate as possible. So would everyone in the boardroom please stand as you're able and join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. And if you're on Zoom, keep your microphone on mute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. Thank you. I'm going to ask for a moment of silence for those who have given their lives in service to our country. Ms. King, may I have a roll call, please?
Peggy Mueller-Aragon.
Here.
Danielle Gonzalez.
Here.
Barbara Peterson.
Here.
Crystal Tapia Romero.
Here.
Josefina Dominguez.
Here.
Courtney Jackson.
Here.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Here. Community members may attend the APS Board of Education meetings in person at the Alice and Bruce King Educational Complex here at 6400 Uptown Boulevard Northeast, or by watching the live stream on the APS Board of Education YouTube channel. Our first item for consideration and action is adoption of the March 15th, 2023 Board of Education meeting agenda and approval of the February 22, 2023, February 27, 2023, and March 6, 2023 special Board of Education meeting minutes. Do I have a motion for this, please?
I move to approve the March 15th, 2023 Board of Education meeting agenda and approve the February 22nd, 2023, February 27th, 2023, and March 6th, 2023 special Board of Education meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Ms. King, can I have a roll call, please?
Peggy Mueller-Aragon.
Yes.
Danielle Gonzalez.
Yes.
Barbara Peterson.
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero.
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez.
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes, our next item is public forum, and Secretary Jackson will lead us in the instructions for public forum.
Welcome to our public forum guests. When you signed up to speak, you were asked to review the rules and expectations which our presiding officer will enforce. The New Mexico Open Meetings Act requires that our agendas specify in advance the items that will be discussed and voted on during the meeting. Therefore, public forum is not a dialogue among speakers and board members, but rather a chance to hear from our community. We will call participants to speak in the order they signed up, whether in person or virtual. Those here with us tonight will be asked to come to the microphone in the center aisle at the back of the room when your name is called. Online guests will stay in a virtual waiting room until it is their turn to speak. When it is your time, you will be escorted into the main meeting space. Please turn on your audio and video. Once your speaking time is up, you will be ushered back into the waiting room. When you are finished speaking, you may choose to leave the meeting and watch it on live stream. We have set aside 45 minutes for public forum. I actually don't know how many there are tonight.
There are only 12
I still?
believe. Yes.
Okay. Because we have fewer than 22 speakers, each of you will have 2 minutes to address the board.
Board member, I'm sorry to interrupt you. There are 25 signed up, so it'll be 1 minute.
Changed.
Okay. That's good to know. So back up. We have more than 22 speakers, which means that each of you will have 1 minute for comments. Please be concise and try not to repeat what others have said. Tonight, there are 25 speakers. Once your time is up, you will be directed to complete your sentence quickly so that others can speak. You may not yield your unused time to another speaker. If we don't get to all speakers or you feel you were unable to convey your message, you may email boarded@aps.edu. In addition, for those of you here tonight, a representative from our service center is here to assist you. She's sitting right here in the front. So at this time, Mr. Gonzalez, will you please introduce our speakers?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Our first speaker tonight is in person, Alyssa Romaine. Romaine? Thank you, ma'am. You have 1 minute once you begin speaking. Ma'am, 1 second. I'm sorry, the mic's not on. Let me make sure. It's okay. You should be okay now.
Is it working? Don't start counting yet.
Yes, go ahead.
My son attends Collette Park Elementary School for its social and communications program for students on the autism spectrum. I am here today because of my profound concern about a new district policy that is reducing funding for schools that serve large numbers of special education students. This policy bases general education funding on the percentage of time that special education students spend in general education classes. This budget change will reduce funding for teachers who instruct my son in art, music, and physical education by half. I am disappointed and alarmed that APS has decided to implement this policy. U.S. Federal Law Section 504 states that our special education students have a right to be free of discrimination in schools that receive federal funding. But this policy contradicts Section 504. It will mean that many special education students at Collette Park will simply not receive the same instruction as those at other schools within APS that have fewer special education students. In effect, this misguided policy is punishing Collette Park for serving students with special needs.
I have to stop you, ma'am. I'm sorry you've gone over a minute. Please, in 1 sentence, wrap up what you have to say.
It is fundamentally unfair and openly discriminatory to allocate funds in this way. It is illegal.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Amelia Robertson. You have 1 minute once you begin speaking. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Amelia Robertson. I'm here as a concerned parent. And I'm here to thank the board for the common sense policies around transgender students that APS currently has. Current policies include calling trans kids by their names. When I was coming up, that was considered basic human decency. I know now some people consider that ideology, and I don't know if any of those folks have ever had a nickname. I did also want to address comments around suicide rates that were raised at the meeting 2 weeks ago. Trans kids do have high rates of suicide. This is known, but I urge the board not to confuse effect and cause. Trans kids have high rates of suicide because they have high rates of homelessness. They have high rates of suicide because they face abuse at home, physical, mental, and sexual, from parents, unsupportive parents who would try to beat the gay out of them. One thing that is statistically true, if you want to reduce a trans child's rate of suicide by half, all you have to do is have one supportive adult in their life. So I'm urging you, please let trans kids continue to be able to speak to teachers and counselors in confidence. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not being hyperbolic when I say current policy is saving lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Nancy Prodinger. I never get it right. I'm sorry, ma'am. You have 1 minute once you begin.
Thank you. I take a very different view. Vast amounts of peer-reviewed research identifies the grave consequences and dangers of the mental disorder gender dysphoria and the reality of what happens when individuals are encouraged to transition versus engaging in appropriate therapy. JAMA Pediatrics found that children identifying as transgender have an increased suicide rate of 600%. This is not because of stated confusion, but due to the consequences of transitioning through chemical and surgical mutilation. The narrative that students who do not admit gender dysphoria will have an increased chance of committing suicide is an absolute falsehood. It is after starting puberty blockers and hormone replacement that individuals show a dramatic increase in suicidal behavior. 10 years post-gender reassignment surgery, the suicide rate triples to 2,000%. General mortality is increased by 3 times. Cross-sex hormone replacement increases pulmonary embolism by 5 times. A study in American Cardiologist reports a 6 times higher risk of heart attacks and 7 times risk of ischemic strokes. Social trends and beliefs do not define reality. Please be informed and protect our children.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Ruth Porta. You have 1 minute, ma'am, once you begin speaking. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Montoya Cordova, members of the committee. This is my first time speaking. I am Ruth Porta, owner of La Esperanza Preschool, but most importantly, I am an Albuquerque and homeowner resident since 2000. My school district is 7 Bar Elementary, James Monroe Middle School, and Cibola High School, the same location where my preschool is located. Our current mixed delivery between community and school-based New Mexico pre-K was intentionally created to give our New Mexico families a choice of early childhood programs that accommodates to their values and needs. The delivery works beautifully, but there is no collaboration between school-based programs to community providers. While schools have a waiting list, they do not share it with community providers. I've had contacted 3 principals already to share their waiting list, and they said that they cannot do that. We are depriving our children from attending an early childhood education program.
Ms. Porta, you have gone over a minute. If you wrap up in one sentence quickly.
We have other issues that need to be fixed before choosing to take all our 3 and 4-year-olds into their schools. Our APS children deserve an education system that focuses on quality, not quantity. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Damon Carbajal. 1 minute once you begin speaking. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Damon Ray Carbajal. I use he, him, L pronouns, and I am the proud managing director for GLSEN New Mexico. And I just want to thank you all for the great policies that we have on the books for transgender students. As someone that works with a lot of transgender youth, these policies are highly effective, highly affirming, and what we need to keep doing. There's also been a lot of talk about mental health. I wear another mental health hat as part of my job, and New Mexico ranks overall 37th in youth mental health overall. This is regardless of any identity. So we need to ensure we're having policies, practices that are encouraging mental health for all students and not just select few. So policies such as the transgender student policy are critical in ensuring that we are creating safe spaces for all. So again, I just want to thank you all for your service on the board and to just remind you that we have policies that are working very effectively. And I have many youth that are thankful for the policy. So thank you so much. And I'll stop talking because I'm rambling.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Our next speaker is Havens Levitt. You have 1 minute once you begin speaking.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Havens Levitt. I'm a Sandia High School graduate of the class of 75 and a 29-year retired Albuquerque public school teacher. And I want to thank you and all of the people in the administration of APS who have committed themselves to understanding that students learn better in safe environments. And we would like for every kid to live in a safe environment at home, but that's not what happens for every kid. And so it's important that we make sure that when kids come to school, they are safe and they're supported regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dan Gillespie. You have 1 minute once you begin speaking, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and board. I showed up last week or 2 weeks ago at that meeting because I tuned in on the 15th of February, and the Attuned Education partners said that the students wanted more rigor. So and then we only have 2 more meetings that I can share because 5-year plans are getting put into place. So I showed up and spoke. Educate2024.org is the paper that I handed over last time to the board. I did learn last meeting, educate2024.org. I did learn that you only need to print 1 copy of a paper that you write. You don't need to print 8. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Todd Reed. You have 1 minute once you begin speaking, sir.
There are no laws that support your claim to exempt parents from the responsibility for their children concerning your transgender or gender dysphoria curriculum. Moreover, you do not have the right to coerce students and parents to accept either. Gender dysphoria disorder is a mental disorder or disability that can only be diagnosed and treated by a physician. Because you have exercised outside your jurisdiction, you and your staff are personally liable under 42 USC statute 1983. Please pass this on to your faculty and staff. IDEA, New Mexico, and federal constitution state that you must first contact parents to receive their consent for any and all influences concerning their children. Article 1, Section 18 U.S.C. Federal Criminal Code sections of interest state, if you know of felonies and fail to report them, you can go to jail. Felony I will be reporting is child abuse and neglect and practicing medicine without a license. The notices that you have received are a warning statement of facts and of claim. You have 10 days to respond to my affidavit by an affidavit or cease and desist such illegal actions, or I will file a criminal complaint and request a grand jury hearing. It is your responsibility to inform your staff that they too are liable and can be sued or criminally prosecuted.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Marcy May. You have 1 minute tonight once you begin speaking, ma'am.
Thank you. I just want to remind the board and the superintendent and PED of the rights of parents that this parental bill of rights has been passed in Congress. 1040-0 the infringement of parental rights. The state and any of its political subdivisions, any other governmental entity, and any other institution may not infringe on the fundamental rights of a parent to direct the upbringing, education, healthcare, mental health of his or her minor child without demonstrating that such action is reasonable and necessary to achieve the compelling state interests, and that such action is narrowly tailored and not otherwise served by a less restrictive means. We have parental rights over our children, not you. You are here to serve the parents of the Albuquerque public school community. This is not the Albuquerque pagan school community. You guys lied with the KB1 that you so celebratory passed last year, saying that you would give the parents their rights. Listen, rights do not come from you.
Miss May, I'm sorry, you've gone over a minute. I'll need you to wrap up in one very quick sentence.
You guys you're going to be held responsible. Mr. Scott Elder will be held responsible for his irresponsibility and not protecting children and not allowing parents to protect children because teachers, they don't own them.
Thank you, ma'am.
Stop.
Thank you, ma'am. The next speaker is Ruth Ann Peterson. Miss Peterson, you have 1 minute. You got that? I will take it and make sure they get it. Okay, I will make sure they get one. Thank you, ma'am. 1 minute once you begin speaking.
Sunlight, the best disinfectant. I am so happy the Project Veritas undercover video brought to light actions being driven by Student Health and Life Skills Department and resource teacher Angela Ruiz, which excludes parents. Let's recap APS's secret agenda recorded on video. Teacher question to Ruiz. So the gender support plan does not need parent input, just director, administrator, and student? Ruiz's response. There's only 3 people required at that plan, the administrator, the student, and the Title IX director. Say what? 2 main points. A child has the right to a safe education conducive to learning. A parent must be made aware of any event that is remarkable or unusual so that they can advocate for their child's rights. APS staff does not have the right to exclude parents. Speaking to a child about sexuality without parental oversight is not appropriate and makes the child unsafe. It puts them at risk for molestation by teachers and administrators, not unusual events. It does not allow for the parents to provide context about what is happening at home. There may be complex issues going on in the home, contributing to a child's interpretations. 2 weeks ago, I asked for Angela Ruiz's credentials, which were not apparent when pulling her name up in the APS staff directory.
Ms. Peterson, I have to stop you, ma'am. I'm sorry. You've gone over a minute. I need you to wrap it up very, very quickly, please.
APS staff has no right to implement secret agendas, and APS absolutely has no right to exclude parents no matter what the credentials.
Thank you, ma'am. And I will make sure they get those. Our next speaker is Audra Sharifi Isfihani. Was it close? I tried. Thank you for your patience with me. You have 1 minute once you begin speaking.
All right. Hi. Thank you, board members, for the opportunity to speak today. I'm a concerned parent of 2 kids in APS. And a couple of weeks ago, I heard some people talk about a so-called secret LGBTQ curriculum. This was news to me, so I decided to do my own research. I'm happy to report that the principal and teachers at my kids' school had no idea what I was talking about. And so we decided that this secret curriculum just doesn't exist. So what a relief, because I would hate for the board to waste its precious time and resources on something that's not actually a problem. You know, we have a lot of problems in the district. I do appreciate the goals and guardrails work that you're doing. And I wanted to mention that at a recent meeting at my school, I heard the staff talking about the goals and guardrails when they were working to set the budget for next year. So that's great. Thank you for that. There's a lot of kids at my school that are struggling academically. And so, you know what they don't need? They don't need adults targeting LGBTQ kids. We don't need that. That's not going to improve student outcomes. So I ask that you just keep your focus on the good work that you're doing, that we can all rally behind and protect trans kids. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Patricia Summerald. Once in a while, I get them right. 1 minute once you begin speaking, ma'am.
Good evening, esteemed board members. My name is Patricia Summerall. I am a 27-year veteran teacher, spending the last 22 years at my alma mater, Rio Grande High School, which is in Zone 2. First, I would like to acknowledge for the first time in its 131-year history, APS has an all-female Board of Education. My hope is that you will work as tirelessly in the boardroom as many of us work in the classroom. I'm representing Rio Grande's teacher safety activist group, SOS. We have a request that in response to the rising instances of fighting, illegal substances, and recently gun possession and violence across Zone 2 campuses, that you support our safety. Help us to work to address the changing nature of student behaviors in order to keep us all safe and alive. Recently, APS has seen 12 guns at 11 schools, multiple overdoses, and the horrific loss of life. These are all signs of unhealthy campuses. In response to these, Mr. Elder stated that he loses sleep, worries, and agonizes over these instances. And I would like to tell Mr. Elders that we are of one mind. I too lose sleep, worry, and agonize every day for the safety and security of my colleagues, staff, students across Zone 2. Gun violence is a devastating reality of our nation and our state, which ranks 12th nationally for gun violence and which is the leading cause of death for teens in New Mexico. We ask this, please support our safety, that our APS police presence be increased at our schools, giving us more boots on the ground and eyes in the game to prevent these instances. Also, that the board review current policy to be more in line with the reality, which is student on student gun violence and not necessarily active intruder mass situations, which we are trained in for Alice.
Ma'am, I have to stop you. You've gone over your minute. Please wrap up very quickly.
The time to worry and agonizing is over. The time to work together towards real world solutions and real issues is upon us. School safety should be of the utmost priority in order for us teachers, students, and schools to thrive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is on Zoom. Rebecca Boyer.
Yes.
Rebecca, are you there?
Yes, that's correct. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. When you begin speaking, it'll be 1 minute.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Boyer. I'm a educational assistant or an EA at West Mesa High School, and I've been an EA with APS for over 22 years. I love what I do. I love my students, and I love my school. It's a great school, and we have a great staff that are working tirelessly. And one of the things we're working tirelessly on is our preventing gun possession as well as violence in our school. Recently, we had a very scary situation where it turned out to be unfounded, where students started receiving text messages saying that there was going to be something going down at West Mesa. Many of the students were very afraid. Some came to our administrators who started looking into this right away, but many of those students went home and they were afraid. These kids are traumatized by all of this. These are students who are dealing with mental health issues and PTSD, as well as anxiety. They should be allowed to be able to be students and not be afraid and not be looking for an escape route from their school. Our school is making some strides. We recently have our cameras working on campus as well as pointed off campus to be able to keep us safe. But I'm in a place where I have staff that come by to see me on a regular basis, and they're coming in and they're not feeling safe.
Ms. Boyer, I have to stop you right there. Move. I'm sorry.
sorry.
I have to stop you. Please wrap up in one quick sentence to finish your minute.
Yes, they are putting on a face and showing that they feel confident in the safety, even though they were not really feeling it. They are like wearing high heels in the sand. On the surface, they're looking like they're calm and everything like that's okay, but they're sinking underneath. We need your help to be on solid ground again. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Roman De Leon. You have 1 minute.
Hello, my name is Roman DeLeon, and I'm a student at West Mesa High. Recently, we've had a shooting in front of the school as well as a threat as of yesterday. I was one of these students that spoke to the administration. However, I feel like as though our administration didn't respond in a way that I felt safe staying at school. An improvement that could be made is making the students feel heard rather than saying, we will look into it or we can't do anything because it is not confirmed. As of right now, I don't feel safe going to school or one of my friends and family members don't feel safe letting me going to school because of these reasons that were unexplained, that didn't give us these necessities to allow us to feel safe and not those being provided. It just doesn't feel like the administration really cares for the students or the staff. I hear students and staff being afraid that someone's going to shoot up the school or they're hearing rumors and that we can't attend school because of these. How am I supposed to be having this normal high school experience, being nervous about speaking or being bad at math when all I remember from school is these shootings and threats? And I would hope that the board would think about implementing a solution that would teach teachers and administration to step up as human beings and to understand students and other administration underneath them as an emotional state, and rather than this is just a rumor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Teresa Ilgen. You have 1 minute tonight.
Good evening, board. I just wanted to start out by saying my name is Teresa Ilgen. I do support APS policies in place of supporting LGBTQIA+ community, but that's not what I'm here to speak about. We formed the Action Now group at West Mesa because we were having so many campus safety concerns. And I understand that maybe our path may not be clearly visible as we come and speak at these board meetings. We've really been encouraging people to kind of come and speak to their own truths, right? But Action Now posts like pretty comprehensive agendas. We meet weekly and we make these meetings available to staff and students in a very public place, in a very transparent way, in a way where we are trying to get as much student voice involved in trying to come to a solution that's good for students, staff, and community members. We have been in the process of developing a survey. We were ready to release that survey this past week when an outside consultant was brought in order to talk to our staff members, and there are different reactions to that throughout the staff, but I can't speak on their behalf. Conversations do take time to have with our staff members, and we've been going about this in a very researched and thoughtful way in the hope that we're going to be able to come to a solution as teaching professionals together.
Miss Ilgen, I've got to stop you. I'm sorry, you've gone over a minute. So please just wrap up quickly in one sentence.
And I'm just gonna, the last little reminder, there was a student that was shot directly off campus last week, Monday. And we're working towards a solution together as a community. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Carissa Gonzalez. Did I skip you? Ms. Gonzalez, you have 1 minute.
Good evening, everyone in the school board. Once again, I'm standing here before you. My name is Carissa Gonzalez. I felt the need to stand here again in hopes that the board will hear, listen, acknowledge the issues that are still occurring at our school campuses. For instance, like our West Mesa High School. As you've heard earlier, we just had another incident right off campus, right across the street, another student that was shot. Thankfully, she's fine. There was no immediate follow-ups with our staff or our student families, except the usual letter that's always sent out, which is getting old and falling on deaf ears. We've been meeting weekly. And now we're currently working with our, family members of West Mesa, community members, but some of us from the Action Now meetings come to these board meetings to share these concerns of guns on campuses and other weapons and, threats of harm. And these issues have really heightened the fear factor amongst our students and our staff. So I'm not sure how much of a wake-up call that we need to do as APS, right? The ones that have been proactive on these issues in the past months, we haven't seen a lot of progress as much as we would like to see. I just have a few questions. How are the board members addressing these issues? How are they being inclusive on these important discussions, plans, solutions in reference to the issues that were brought to the school board? And do you know how our students are feeling at this point with these concerns? Where's the accountability? My accountability is being here.
Ms. Gonzalez, I have to stop you. I'm sorry. You've gone over.
Staff, so
Just wrap up.
where's the accountability?
Thank you, ma'am. And board members, I skipped someone earlier in the evening. Estrella Reed. I apologize. I went right past your name. My mistake. You have 1 minute once you begin speaking.
All right, this is in reference to the gender dysphoria curriculum. New Mexico Statute 36(1), criminal offenses of child abuse and abandonment. Some definitions here from the statute. Abandonment of a child consists of the parent, guardian, or custodian of a child intentionally leaving or abandoning the child under circumstances whereby the child may or does suffer neglect, including bodily harm. A child means a person who is less than 18 years of age. APS has stated that the child is under the age of 14 where this curriculum is brought out. Neglect means that a child is without proper parental or custodian care for the child's well-being because of the faults or habits of the guardian. Negligently refers to criminal negligence, which means that a person knew or should have known of the dangers involved and acted with a reckless disregard for the safety or health of the child. APS has disregarded the medical data that only danger and harm has come from the children who have pursued treatments for gender dysphoria disorder, both short and long term. APS has intentionally endangered parents, children attending their schools. APS has violated civil and criminal statutes, so I wouldn't call it successful.
Thank you. Our next speaker is on Zoom. Mariel Leon Lascano. You have 1
yes.
minute. You have 1 minute once you begin speaking and we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Hello, good evening. My name is Maria Elena Lascano. I am a senior at West Mesa High School, and I have come here to talk about my and many others' worries on gun violence on campus. Last week, a student was shot, and just yesterday, there was talk about a gun shooting on campus, but it was investigated and it was discovered to be a hoax. But many other times, it has not been. This past year and last year as well, we have gone into lockdown several times. I don't feel safe. My friends don't feel safe. My teachers and staff don't feel safe. I don't want to feel unsafe on campus anymore. I hope that in me talking to you, you will realize the gravity of gun violence in and around the campus. I wish you have a safer school. And currently the school is working on a survey to gather these opinions on how to do it through the Action Now group. I hope you will become a part of it as well. And I will take the actual steps necessary to make the change and to impact the safety in our classrooms. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Our next speaker is Donna Fletcher, and she is on Zoom. And she is joining now. Donna, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Sorry.
That's okay. You have 1 minute once you begin speaking.
Okay. I'm Donna Fletcher. I was born in Albuquerque, graduated from Manzano. My two children graduated from Del Norte. I've owned and operated an early childhood education center for 29 years in Northwest Albuquerque. And I'm astounded that APS is considering renovating some of their low performing schools and low enrollment elementaries into early childhood education centers. APS needs to focus on improving student outcomes for children K through 12. I'm very pleased that the APS board and the superintendent elder and APS staff have developed next steps on student outcomes focused governance. I think the goals and the guardrails are great. They're definitely going in the right direction to improve student outcomes for K through 12. APS families and the entire community need to put all of our efforts into these next steps. It is so important. After 29 years as an early childhood educator in the private sector, it is disheartening to keep hearing that we are 49th, 50th in the nation regarding literacy, math. It seems like everything. APS and our tax dollars need to be used to better student outcomes for children K through 12, and we need to fix this before we even consider teaching and providing education for children 3 and 4-year-olds. And the safety issue is just unbelievable. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Laura Vickers. You have 1 minute, ma'am. Thank you.
Good evening, board members. My name is Laura Vickers. I'm a 9th grade English teacher at West Mesa High School. And you've apparently heard all these people from West Mesa. So I just want to let you know, because I don't think it's been very clear about what we want. The first thing we want is a social worker. We do not want the social worker taken from another school that needs it, like Rio Grande. That school needs their social worker. Okay. Second thing we want, at least 3 more security guards or CSAs. And my suggestion here is that you market this position like all the other businesses out there in Albuquerque that show, hey, we need these people. I personally looked for the positions online. They are buried. You have to really get in there. Oh, you have to sign up. You have to do this. You have to do that. Okay. You know, can we make this public? That's pretty simple thing to ask for. The third thing that we would like is to be trusted as professionals to resolve our own issues at school without bringing in outside sources that have no idea of what's going on in our school.
Mrs. Vickers, I'm sorry, I have to stop you. You've gone over a minute. Hold on. Please wrap up 1 quick sentence.
Those are the 3 things we want. Please consider that. And by the way, my adult behavior is just fine. I think adult behavior probably starts at the top and then goes down like that.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Gabrielle Wheeler. You have 1 minute once you begin speaking. Thank you.
Here, APS board members, I've been coming here for the last 4 weeks. My name is Gabrielle Wheeler. I work with Eastgate Kids and I've been there for almost 12 years now. I hold an event every year for Breaking 50 because I'm an advocate for New Mexico to come out of ranking last. And my area of expertise that I've dedicated my life to, many sleepless nights through COVID, staying open through COVID, educating kids that, well, APS was closed. And now I'm hearing that APS wants to convert their buildings into early childcare centers. You are not experts in the 0 to 5. And what I've heard every week is that these children are afraid to go to school. Images of Sandy Hook come to my mind. These children don't feel safe. They don't have enough security guards. And now APS is saying that they want to take over 3 and 4-year-olds. We are a private industry. We provide home-like nurturing environments. That is a safe environment for these young children. If we want to fix what's happening in New Mexico, you have to fix the foundation. You cannot take the 0 to 5 from these home-like nurturing environments with educators that are specially trained in early childcare. I thought of something funny to say that, you know, it's like asking Chick-fil-A to start making hamburgers. There's no comparison for the early childcare industry.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, you've gone over your minute. Can you finish quickly?
For your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is on Zoom. It's Casey Peterson. Casey, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. You guys hear me?
Yes, sir. You have 1 minute tonight. Thank you.
All right. Well, we had I guess Nancy Drew or whatever her name was up earlier that supposedly did some investigation in the school and they wouldn't tell her about the secret curriculum. So surprise, surprise, they didn't tell her about the secret curriculum. But if you want to know about the secret curriculum, we have more undercover investigations up. We actually put them in one spot. So you can go to freedomfamiliesunited.com. And we have 3 up in the Albuquerque public school systems. And we've been reached out to for other investigation. Quite an overwhelming response, really, of people inside of APS. So if you're looking for more materials for lawsuits, it's coming. And also working on something right now, should be out here in the next day or so. That is specifically regarding these school boards and some of the school board trainings you guys have been attending. So it's no wonder why everything's gotten so extreme. These trainings I've been listening to all day are absolutely nuts. So we're editing that up right now. That'll be up at freedomfamiliesunited.com. And anybody can reach out to us at reclaimthekids@protonmail.com if they want to go undercover or share a story or anything else if they want to help to reclaim the kids. That's reclaimthekids@protonmail.com. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Michaela Peterson. And she's on Zoom. You there?
Can you hear me?
We can. You have 1 minute once you begin speaking.
Okay, thank you. A child's gender identity is their mental health. So school staff, like Casey said, they are coming forward talking about the unethical behavior being asked of them to hide children's mental health from their parents. Depression and self-harming children are being overlooked and hidden from their parents because of these policies. This is not a political issue. You know, you are the biggest school district in New Mexico. You could be the leaders on this issue and save so many LGBTQ and vulnerable kids. The medical and pharmaceutical industry is making tons of money on each of these youth, and they are led into this affirmative model of gender care. And as we, as children's protectors, leaders, and educators, you know, we should be asking a lot more questions in their defense. When did the schools gain the power to determine which parents are fit to raise their children? Is every teacher, administrator, counselor, social worker, staff, superintendent, and school board member who backs this policy or says nothing? Are you ready for the legal ramifications of knowing a child had an identity crisis and mental health issues, vulnerabilities, and kept it from their parents? And what if they do, God forbid, harm themselves? You will be held responsible for that harm. It should be criminal to keep a child's mental well-being from their parents.
Ms. Peterson, I'm sorry I had to stop you. Please wrap up in one quick sentence.
I'm all done. I know you guys work really hard, and I just hope that you'll look into this issue further. It should not be a political issue. It is about saving these vulnerable youth. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. And board members, that concludes public forum.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for speaking tonight. And as we state in the, when we describe where we're going in the procedural directive, we go right into our meeting. So I just want to thank everyone again for being here tonight. Also wanted to make an announcement to the board. I meant to do this at the beginning. Superintendent Elder got held up in a meeting with the strategic planning group, the advisory group. He did text me that he might be running late. It seems like the meeting is going a little bit longer. Evidently, it was the only night they could host this meeting, and it's with the community. So that's where he's at tonight. So I just wanted to let you all know that. All right. So our next item for approval is the consent calendar. And this is consideration for approval of the March 15, 2023 Board of Education meeting items. Do I have a motion for this, please?
I move to approve the consent calendar items for March 15th, 2023.
I'll second. This is Danielle.
Thank you. Ms. King, may I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero?
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez?
Yes.
Courtney Jackson?
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova?
Yes. Okay, the next item is student outcomes focused governance. And I'm just going to have have a couple of notes here on the next steps on where we are on our student outcomes focused governance. First, I just want to congratulate my fellow board members and superintendent and the administration. We finalized our 4 goals and our guardrails. We've got them in these beautiful posters. I want to thank the administration and the communications team for helping to get these up. These will stay up in the room. Plus, they also gave us these really nice, colorful pieces that we have on the dais will help us as we're going. These will stay with us on the desk so that we can kind of remember them. We're going to have to commit them to memory, but it was a good piece for us to have for tonight. At the last meeting, we adopted an implementation calendar outlining the work ahead. And as much as we have accomplished by listening to our community and setting student outcome focused goals and guardrails, this is a long process and we have only just begun. So we've done some really good work. There's no doubt, but there's definitely a whole lot more to come. So among our next steps is adopting a monitoring calendar that the administration is now working on. With Superintendent Elder. We'll talk more about that at our next meeting. Obviously, it's not here tonight. We're going to be communicating with the public. Oh, we've got some other folks communicating with the public and sharing our goals and guardrails that were created with their input and helping them to better understand our focus on student outcomes. I do want to mention to the board, I did have an opportunity. Channel 7 has been really generous. They did interview me yesterday to just ask on an update on where we are. And I really appreciate the media taking the time to really follow along with this. And they've made a commitment to wanting to follow along with us and putting out some more media spots for us so that we can, especially if we're going to be hosting events and we need to get parents to those events. We're also receiving board member training on effective progress monitoring. So that's going to be coming up for us as well. I know that our wonderful coach, Ashley, is going to be working with us. We're going to be practicing monitoring a specific goal that's going to be coming up later this summer as we get, first we got to get through this legislative session. There's some things that we're working on and we've got budget, but that is already scheduled. And I know if we saw the implementation timeline that Ashley had sent to us, you can see that we're going to start on that. The first part is just to practice so that we as board members can also get into the groove of asking the right questions and sort of helping us to move through this process. We're also going to begin a policy diet to ensure policy is aligned with the goals, guardrails, and board work. And we're going to be revising our board operating procedures to align with the goals and guardrails, including the board's conflict of interest policy and our own guardrails. So after consulting with Ashley, I would like to cancel, and we've already talked, we're canceling our April 3rd policy committee meeting, in which we were going to discuss conflict of interest, code of conduct, and board review procedural directives. Ashley explained that our approved timeline calls for an ad hoc committee to work through the details of our board operating procedures. And that ad hoc committee should comprise of just a couple of board members who would work with her and then make recommendations for the board so that we would consider those and then discuss those together. And I'm kind of like a surprise announcement, but I would like to appoint board members Dominguez and Jackson to serve on that ad hoc committee. And the reason I'd like to do that is because both board members Dominguez and Jackson are part of the SOFG cohort that is going on and receiving ongoing coaching on that. Policy Chair Gonzalez is not able to attend the April policy meeting, so that was another reason that we were also looking at that. And the only other item that we had considered including on the agenda for the policy committee was an updated conflict of interest form that was more appropriate for board members. And so we handled, I believe that was drafted. There was a new conflict of interest form that was given to everyone tonight. I think it was on our dais. So if you can take a look at that and sign that and get that over to Johanna King, that would be great. I've also asked Ashley to be available. If any of you have any questions, Ashley, I think she's listening to us tonight too. So if you have any questions about our next steps for the board and the district, we can discuss that further. So I'll open it up for questions.
Yeah, can we go back to what I was just appointed to and what it is?
Yes,
and I guess I'm confused why it's not like 3 people. So like why the policy chair wouldn't be included in that and what is it?
So what it is, and we did this before because I know we had board member Peterson and Gonzalez at the beginning working together as an ad hoc, and they presented some policy work for us. I think it was all of our board procedures that were done. So it was with 2 members. This is just we had talked about needing to come up with our board operating procedures. So that would be our code of conduct, how we go into schools, sort of looking at all of those things that we talked about that we need to do that would be in alignment with SOFG. And Ashley is going to coach the two folks that are going to pull that together. And really, quite frankly, when we were thinking about this, I thought about you and Board Member Dominguez, because you two are continuing to be part of that SOFG cohort. And I thought it would be a good way for you all to get some coaching with your team members that you're working with. And it was close to that. So I thought it would be a good idea for the two of you to pull that together. It doesn't mean that none of us have any input into it, but it's an opportunity for you two as two board members, pull it, and then we'll come together and we'll consider it as a group. So that was my thinking on that.
So board operating procedures and like within just like working on it in a month, because you mentioned how long is this process expected to?
It shouldn't, I don't know. Ashley, can you come on? Because I'm not quite sure how long it will take, but it will be with the two of you sort of looking, and it's narrow. It's not looking at a big piece. It's just really narrowly looking at our operating procedures for us, are sort of around those things that we talked about: code of conduct, how we go into schools, our communication. Ashley, is there anything else that I'm missing in that?
Hi, good afternoon or evening, Board and President Montoya Cordova. So your board operating procedures are generally just the guidelines that you have around how your board interacts with each other, with the community, and with the district. And you probably have already have these in one shape or form, generally board operating policies. It sounds like you have recently done a review of them. So it shouldn't take a very long time to actually do. Generally, the process is about 3 months, but if you've recently gone through the review process of the procedures that you have in place, it takes maybe a month, maybe 2 months. And part of the reason that it does take a little bit longer is because one of the things that your committee will be tasked with doing is actually going out and visiting one-on-one with each individual board member to get their vision, their direction on how these procedures should be directed.
May I get, oh, go ahead. I guess I still have questions about who's on the committee and why and the timeline. So would respectfully volunteer to be a part of the committee, having just recently revisited and rewritten all of those policies previously, plus the context from other school districts. So I have all of the original versions and markups and reasons for the previous edits and best practice in other school districts. And also I'm still not clear on the timing. You mentioned I'm not here for April 3rd, which is true, but I am here for the next 2 to 3 months. So
no, and I didn't say that well. It was only in the context of why we were canceling the April 3rd meeting, the policy meeting. That was it. Had nothing to do with anything else other than you weren't going to be here for the next policy meeting anyway, and we didn't have a really heavy agenda. So it made sense to just go ahead and cancel that, and we'll reschedule when you're back, because we know you're going to be back, and we'll do that. I'm working with my coach, and I was working with Ashley, and, after some conversation, looking at it, it was like, it's also kind of like having fresh eyes. And so it's having two different sets of board members that would be looking at it too. So you've done you and Barbara both did a tremendous amount of work on that. So it's sort of like just having two different board members who can put a different set of eyes on it. So it's in no way of like leaving anybody out or dismissing anything else, but it's really just sort of broadening that perspective so that we could just make sure we have different perspectives. And it was I saw it as an opportunity for board member Jackson and Dominguez, because I know that they're both really invested in that cohort too, and the work that they're doing there, because I think they could bring some learning, some perspective that's also coming from the cohort. So that was my only perspective on that, on why I was wanting to just have those two board members. And as Ashley said, they will be visiting with each of us anyway, and we're all going to be coming back. And so we can look at it that way. I have utmost confidence too that both of them would indeed like come back to you, board member Gonzalez, around, maybe a why or getting some like feedback on some things if they needed to, if they're working on it. But it's really just to change perspective, and it was just to have a broader perspective.
And it's going to be very focused.
It's very focused, right? And it is reviewing what we already have in place, which was a lot of work was done into that, but it's just an opportunity for us to go back and just revisit that and review it, but working with it in the eyes of SOFG. And again, I just believed that Board Member Dominguez and Jackson, having spent, they're spending in a lot of time with the SOFG cohort. So I thought it would be a good idea.
I appreciate this because in light of the cohort and the work that we're doing currently, it gives me at least a very specific homework assignment as it relates to the readings that we're doing collectively. And it gives us some one-on-one time with Ashley, our coach and consultant, and it gives me some time with Board Member Jackson. I mean, we don't really get to talk to one another. And so I think it's a great idea to start opening up channels of communication on topics that will be productive.
Can I jump in?
Go ahead.
So I'm hearing what's being said, but I also feel like we're now duplicating the work what was already done. Because it sounds like we just went through this entire process and we all had input as to what our operating procedures would look like. And now I feel like we're repeating the same cycle of what was done. And it just doesn't seem like good use of our time in terms, like I could see if we had done this, if this was something we looked at years ago, but we just went through this process. And it just does not seem wise to be duplicating our efforts when it was something we just discussed.
And I think Ashley, you wanted to, I could see you wanting to weigh in on that, on the reason why we do it under the SOFG.
Yeah. So so part of student outcomes focused governance is getting the board to align your activities with board work. So prior to, I'm not sure when you did the work, but I'm assuming that it was before you entered into an engagement with Council of the Great City Schools and started implementing student outcomes focused governance. And that's really the lens that this is going through. So having done the work semi-recently is actually a really good thing, because that means that there's it's likely that most of the stuff that that the committee will bring forward is what is already there. But it will just be, the committee will be tasked with tailoring the work to what is aligned with student outcomes focused governance, getting the board to focus on board work so that the rest of the district can then align their behaviors, their adult behaviors with student outcomes focus. One of the other questions, actually, I think that answer. So one of the other things I wanted to clarify. So you all adopted the implementation timeline at the last meeting or the meeting before, and this was one of the very first things that was on the implementation timeline as a priority for doing this work. So if the board no longer feels that this is a priority, then it'll be necessary for you to vote to change the implementation timeline.
Can I go ahead? I just want to say really quickly. So Board Member Tabio Romero, I appreciate what you're saying there. I don't think it's going to be a duplication of effort as much as it is a quick review, just to make sure that we're in alignment, and that's it. And we're probably going to get a great grade on this one. I mean, I think it's just mostly just seeing places where maybe there is a gap and there is maybe something that we need to tweak a bit, but it's probably not going to be a lot. So I'm anticipating that for both board members, Dominguez and Jackson, is that one is it helps them with their SOFG cohort work too that they're doing, because it gives them a homework assignment that they can work and they can get some coaching on, and they can work on that as well. And And I think it'll also just be very affirming for us in terms of the work that we have already done and that Chair Gonzalez has already led us through. It's just really affirming that. And just if there are places that we need to, to tweak some things, it'll probably be minor, but it's not, I don't see it as very repetitive, but it's kind of part of our self-evaluation piece too, and just making sure that we're aligned. I have heard us also on the dais about some concerns and questions that we have around code of conduct and those kinds of pieces. And so there is a need for us to just sort of strengthen that. And so it's an opportunity for us to do that.
My turn.
Go ahead.
So yeah, I agree. I think that this is a good ad hoc committee. I am happy to sit. I think that having board operating procedures, looked at, refined is definitely something we need to do. The only addition and change that I would make to it, and can't wait to work with Josefina, girl, we're going to do it. The change I would make is because we have a committee structure and we have a committee chair, and this is part of the diet. This is part of the refining. This is part of the procedure. I would request that the addition to this ad hoc committee is the policy chair to add to whatever work has already been done and refined.
So let me just interject here. I understand because I was chair of the capital outlay committee at capital outlay and technology property committee. It doesn't feel good or at the moment to be displaced. But, the whole time I kept telling myself there is a higher purpose here. And oftentimes I have to tell myself, trust the process. And so I guess I'm throwing that out. I'm looking forward to revisiting what's been done already. Because I feel a little disconnected from that through no error from anybody else. But I'm looking forward to having Ashley's guidance on the questions that were left lingering. So I see it as a good SOFG training process.
So just to respond to Member Jackson and to Member Dominguez, I mean, this is certainly not about feelings of displacement. I think it's about acknowledging expertise. So one, yes, I have spent my entire career in education policy working with school boards and school districts around these issues. So to bring certain level of expertise to the table around these decisions. And not anticipating this, I already reached out to school board members across the country and to my school board policy coach to say, hey, which other districts are doing SOFG and who have also updated your procedural directives or administrative directives, whatever they're called in other districts, and your policies, and what have you learned from the process, and what are some good policies, and how do you guys develop policies? So I started that work already. So I'm happy to hand it over to Member Jackson, but they are the relationships and the and Member Dominguez. They are the relationships and the expertise and the experience that I do bring to the table.
Mm-hmm.
But I would just add,
Go ahead, Barbara.
we are 7 equal people. We each come with our own expertise and our own background. Every single piece of that experience that we bring to the table is valuable. And so I think there's no danger that we won't benefit from Board Member Gonzalez's work and experience. It's played a major role in where we are right now. I do think that there's a tendency to sideline certain views. And I think that having Board Member Jackson, Board Member Dominguez look at this with fresh eyes will bring more to it, not exclude the expertise that Board Member Gonzalez has. It is playing a major role in the direction of this board. But I do think that in this case, it would help balance and equalize the expertise and the experience of two people that haven't played such a dominant role in where we are.
Yeah, and I just want to add that, this has nothing to do about individuals or anything like this. One of the things that I've come to realize after being on the board for 5 years is that sometimes having opportunities to also demonstrate our leadership or build our leadership and our expertise is really crucial, because we're all going to be, well, you all, especially those that will remain, are going to, hopefully we have, various roles and developing roles. And so I think it's really important, and it's a great opportunity to sort of bounce in and out of different areas so that you can develop that level of expertise and those relationships and that collaboration as well. So I also want to say, Board Member Gonzalez, it has nothing to do about your expertise. We totally value it. Your expertise as the policy expert is really helpful. The intention here was just really to just look at the policies that we have right now, with sort of also helping to develop our board members that have interest in those areas as well too, so that they can also develop some expertise and some partnerships and leadership roles in those pieces as well. So that was totally just my intention on that, in terms of setting that small ad hoc committee, because it is all going to come back through policy no matter what. And as a policy chair, we're going to rely on your expertise to make sure that as we're looking at it, that it's looked at from the lens of your expertise.
I just have a quick question, Ashley. If you could just let me know if there would be any harm to having a third person on there. I mean, it's just the number that's usually used whenever any other district is going through this.
So generally for an ad hoc committee, it's you want it to be fewer than a quorum of the board. So the number of, I'm agnostic when it comes to how many people or who or in any of this discussion. But generally, as a rule of thumb, it is a good idea to spread out the leadership opportunities on your board, almost as checks and balances. And as many of you have mentioned, new eyes and giving the opportunity to let other people look at the decisions before you. And as President Montoya Cordova mentioned, this is actually something that will, so the items that end up in your policy manual will go, that our policies will go back through the policy committee, I assume, as part of your traditional structure. However, this is not necessarily a policy conversation. This is more of a conversation about board norms and agreements, how you interact with each other, how you interact with the team. So there's a whole other section of the implementation timeline that has to do with redoing your committee diet. And I would expect that that would be a different group of individuals for that ad hoc committee. And the policy diet, I would actually expect that to go through the policy committee because those are very specific policy things. So that's just my overall feedback as far as the decision-making process has gone.
Thank you. I mean, I know we just all have our strengths, and I just want to make sure that everybody does know that, and we all have an equal say in whatever is going on. So, and I just trust that that is exactly what's going to happen, whether it's 2 or 3 people, that they will make sure and talk to all of us. So thanks, Ashley.
That was the intention. Any other comments or feedback?
I do have questions about other parts of your report.
Sure.
If we're ready to move there.
Go ahead.
So the first thing that you mentioned as the next step is that we're adopting a monitoring calendar that's being prepared by the district. What's the time frame for that?
So I know that Ashley sent me today. I've got a calendar that is, it goes like from here all the way to like January. And there's the monitoring pieces are in there. And it's going to be what we're going to monitor, what's going to be the first goal we're going to monitor.
I'm sorry, I understand what we're monitoring. What's the time frame for when we will see the monitoring calendar and start the process?
So I got the calendar today, just before this meeting, so that I could look at it, and I'll get back with Ashley. Didn't have enough time to finalize that today. So I would assume by the next board meeting, we'll have that calendar completed. Unless, Ashley, am I going to have it ready? Go ahead.
No, so the monitoring calendar is actually something that the superintendent is working on with his team. And that will be a conversation. So that'll be a question for him. And generally, it generally takes about a month or so after you have finalized your goals and guardrails. It really just depends on how much time it takes them to identify when the different interim goals and interim guardrails will be measured, and then how long it will take to prepare the reports after they're measured. So it's really that just the staff looking at the timeline and figuring out how everything gets laid out over the span of the
So when we met earlier last week, we talked about what goals we would start with first. And I know that the superintendent talked about potentially starting with the goal on that we would practice with goal number 3, so that we would start there first. But a lot of the goals that we have, so 1s, 2, and 4, are dependent on us having data. So we have to get the data in there so that we can set the monitoring schedule for those. So that's one of the things that we have to get ready. And I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question, because I did get this implementation calendar from Ashley today. So I'm like seeing calendars everywhere, and we did have that conversation. So the superintendent right now, and superintendent, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but we started with that particular piece first, thinking that that would be the first one we would go for. And then he's going to put the calendar together on the others based on when we get data, so that we could start with some good, we'd have to start with some data.
Yes.
We're getting coached.
Talked about this last week for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the goals we don't have the data for, but we do have for number 3. So I think we could start with number 3. I just haven't worked out quite the details with Dr. Bowman and his team regarding exactly when we could start. But I believe when I spoke with Ms. Paz, the goal was to begin that work sometime in early June.
So in terms of when the district would create a monitoring calendar, we would be able to be integrated with the implementation calendar. I'm just trying to get a sense of when we're going to see things, because a lot of the update was this stuff is coming. So just wanted to get a better sense of like when.
So again, for the monitoring, some of the data has to actually happen. So we're going into April, and we'll start taking the MASA then, right? So then we have to wait for the results. So goals 1 and 2 we're sort of pinned on. I don't think there's a lot I can do. We do have the possibility of sharing some of our interim data, and we've talked about maybe that might be best. What Ms. Paz had indicated was that we were to begin to provide data to you so that we could work with the board, learning in terms of what kind of questions are good questions to be asked, and to prepare us in terms of how we will be responding to the type of questions you're going to be asking of us. And that was supposed to be the work sometime between late May, early June through September. And then September, we'll start getting into the interim goals more specifically, because we'll have broken down the data by then. And then we have to develop the calendar for this month is goal 1, perhaps for a grade level. This next month is goal 2, perhaps for a grade level, because we're not going to be able to present on all of it every time. And that's where the calendar has to be developed. So what I was under the impression that I was supposed to produce was something for early June to begin this work of the training of the board and the district. And then we'll have a full calendar beginning next school year.
If I may, I think there is a misunderstanding about what the monitoring calendar is. which is, that is my fault. I should have made that more clear. So what I will do is I will prepare, I'll prepare an email and send it to the entire board that clarifies what the monitoring calendar is, what the role is that it plays, and what you should expect for it. But essentially, it should be, it is a calendar that spans for the entire length of the entire cycle of your goals, and it details when the board will monitor which goals, which interim goals, interim guardrails, and then at what time you will look at your overall performance for your summative goals and the yearly performance of your guardrails. So I will provide that clarification email, and I'll also work with Superintendent Elder and his team to make sure that they that they have clarity on that as well.
Okay, you had another question on the communication, I bet.
No, it was so Superintendent Elder said we could potentially start reporting on the interim goals. And so my question was, when are we going to see the interims and what's the progression of those? Because there was a lot of feedback that we provided in the first presentation on the interim goals and interim guidelines, and the district was going to go back and make some edits. And so I just wanted to get a sense of that time frame.
Ashley's shaking her head no on that. Go ahead, Ashley.
I'm sorry. No, so when you, the interim goals and the interim guardrails that you saw were, those are not things that the board has control over changing. And I feel like it was very clear when you voted to adopt your guardrails that the guardrails that you adopted were based on the interims that you saw, and those interims were the superintendent's interpretation of the guardrails that you adopted. So at this point, what you saw is what you have. If you have the intention of those changing, it's the board's role to go back and change the actual guardrails to make them more specific around what your expectations are.
Go ahead. Well, I was gonna say that also just feels like a switch and bait then. I mean, we can go back and look at the video, but in the conversation we had, they sat there, we gave a lot of feedback, they nodded, they said they would make edits. We were asked if we felt okay about our overall guardrails, and that's what we voted on. We weren't voting on the interim. So I get it that your process is that we don't have control over their interims, but if we gave feedback that we didn't feel like some of the interims were aligned to the overall goals and guardrails, then it seems like some changes should be made and we should be brought up to speed about them.
I remember Ashley warning us in a very subtle way. Are you ready?
Like,
are you ready to, well, you're right. But I think at the end of that meeting, what I remember is that we had given enough feedback during the discussion that the leadership team knew what we were after. And
yeah, and so I left that meeting believing that we adopted the guardrails with the interims that they had presented, with a lot of feedback in terms of how they'll be able to think about those as they're reporting to us. So I thought that they'll also be taking that in terms of like some of the inputs or some of the report out that they'll show us and how they got to the particular measurement that they had or the thing that they proposed. So, because I know that when I was getting coached as we were doing this, and I kept saying, are we comfortable? Because what I understand is that as we adopt these guardrails, we're also adopting these interims. And so it doesn't mean that the district doesn't take into account some of our thoughts around the ways that they could look at those interims or the kind of inputs or the kind of data that they're going to use to support where they are. But I mean, all I'll say is I think we just need to give ourselves, a chance to try this and do this. It may not be perfect. It may not be exactly what I hear from the others on the cohort is that it's not going to be perfect this first round, but let's give it a whirl. We are very invested in the goals and the guardrails that we have. And I think it's going to be okay. I mean, I think we just need to trust the process, and We just need to keep moving forward where we are, because it's really important to, what I hear from the board is it was really important on our guardrails in terms of what we had and what we knew that we wanted to protect for the community. And I think when we get our first reports out and we see it, we'll be able to see how we're doing against those guardrails in terms of the way that they were written. And let's see how well the district, comes back to us in terms of those things on how we protected it with the feedback that we also gave them. I mean, it was a great conversation. So I don't think it gets lost in translation, but I think it will become part of the richness of how it's reported back to us. Superintendent, I can see you want to say something, and so I'm going to stop there.
Yeah, I do, because Board President. So as far as the bait and switch, I don't think that's really fair, because it wasn't us that was told that this is how it had to be. With that said, I thought you guys gave us good feedback. And so when we've been meeting, we're talking about, and we may come back to you and say, you know what, we really do have to move this interim guardrail based on your feedback. So I understand that by Ms. Paz was very clear with me. No, when they accepted, and you don't have to. But we got good feedback. And so we're working on it, and we may very well come back to you before June and say, here are some changes we'd like to propose, and you have to accept them. Is that, but that wasn't that, because we walked out saying, yeah, we have to make these changes. And then I was informed that no, when you accepted the interim guardrails, that you accepted, or the guardrails, you accept interim guardrails. But again, you gave good feedback, and I don't think we're ignoring that.
I mean, so I would just like to see, if you said you're not ignoring the feedback that you were given, then we still don't know if you're going to make any changes, though, to those goals and guardrails, correct? Like, we don't know. And so it's hard when we just don't know what's going to happen and we don't have the finalized version, really. And I know that has really nothing to do with us, but you are saying that our feedback was good. So
Yeah, and I agree with that. Like I said, there's been moments in this process that I've struggled with the process. And this is one of them. I understand that I'm not technically required to make the adjustments. I think we may be interested in making some of those adjustments, and we would bring those to you.
So I guess my point around this isn't the Bible is there's no technical requirement of anything. So when you asked, did we feel comfortable with the guardrails? I shook my head and said no. And then you said, we're voting just on the guardrails, not on the interim. So I said, okay, I will motion for us to approve the guardrails. I felt like I was pretty clear in that meeting that I was not okay with the interims. I think lots of folks gave feedback. Superintendent has acknowledged that. And so what is the harm to seeing the revisions that are being made, particularly for some of those goals and guardrails where there was a fair amount of conversation around what was the intent of the goal or guardrail versus what was interpreted. I think there was a lot of feedback on the equity perspective in particular in terms of how you might measure disparities across the district by student group or zone or whatever. There was another one which I'm not remembering right now, but I see no reason why we don't share information, I guess is the question. I understand there's a process that SOFG works with, but I think it would be helpful to see the interims, and in sort of the context of my question around timing overall, when do we see the interim monitor? When do we see the monitoring calendar? How do we know where we're going? Just making sure that there's more transparency, both in terms of what are our responsibilities as board members, collectively as a board, and what's our responsibility in terms of holding the district accountable for their function. If I don't know what you are doing or not doing, it's hard to hold you accountable, the district, for your work on this. But I think it's just asking for more communication, more transparency.
And we're getting there. I just want to say, because we just met literally, when did we meet, Superintendent, with Ashley? I can't even remember the date. Because we just had it was last week. So we're getting there. We're trying to pull all of that together so that we can bring it to the board. This was literally an update of what our next steps are. Our next step is to adopt a monitoring calendar, which we're pulling together so that we can bring it to the board so we can have transparency. My my thought is just keeping you guys updated on the conversations that we're having of how we're pulling ourselves together so that we can bring this, we can bring this all to light so that we're all on the same page. There is no page really. And I think that's the most important part. There isn't like a page that you all haven't seen or we haven't talked about. It's really about processes that we're working on so that we can bring it to you all. We can bring a timeline, we can bring all of those pieces. And I appreciate you holding us like, well, when is that going to happen and how soon is that going to happen? Those are the things that we're working on. And you just heard Ashley as she's coaching us. It was literally just last week that we spoke. So we're going to be bringing that, and it's going to be, it will be much more coherent in terms of where we are. I don't know what else I want to say on that. I mean, except that, given the newness, we just passed these at the last meeting, so gave them a lot of feedback. I appreciate the superintendent's thoughts that he took the feedback. And so if you're going to be bringing back an adjustment on an interim because you took the feedback, that's great. And then we'll look at that. But I'm also aware that under the SOFG approach, we don't approve the interims. They have to determine how it's the best way for them to measure themselves around the goals and the guardrails that we set. So they're going to determine what's the best way for them. And we gave feedback in terms of what we thought would be a good, some good suggestions on that. And let's see how it comes to us on that, and we'll see how it goes. And then our job is holding them accountable to what they said they wanted to do and how they were going to do it. And that holds us accountable to monitor each of those goals and those guardrails.
So I just have a quick question, and maybe it goes to Ashley. So we're going to be adopting a monitoring calendar soon, right? But we're going to adopt this monitoring calendar, and we may not even have the finalized version of the interim goals, or, I mean, that's a question to you, Ashley. I mean, is that how we do it?
So the monitoring calendar, you really need to have the interim goals before you adopt the monitoring calendar. Because you have to know if the interim measures that you're looking at are going to change, then that may change up when you're able to monitor them. They may be snapshots that are taken at different points throughout the year. One may be in December, one may be in January. It really just depends on what it is that you're monitoring and when that measure is taken, when that if it's an assessment or a survey or whatever. It really depends on what the interim is going to be. So if you don't know what the interims are, you can't have a monitoring calendar. But again, the guardrails that you adopted are the individual comments, and this is true for any vote that you take as a board. Individual comments are individual comments. Individual board members do not have authority to send direction to the district. The action that you take as a body corporate, the action that you take as a board is what sends the direction to the district. And so when you vote to approve something, you are saying to the district, here is the direction that we are giving you. So all of those individual comments only mean as much if you actually vote in a way that is consistent with them. So I strongly urge the board to use this moment to reevaluate what your guardrails are. And I heard the superintendent and hear him say that he liked the feedback, that he would like to make changes, but just understand that the direction that you have given him is clear. And so any changes or any expectations that you have around what changes need to be made should be embedded with the priorities that you're setting through your goals and through your guardrails.
So Ashley, I have a quick question for you. So on boards that are just starting this process, because we're just starting this process, and I'm assuming that there are boards that have probably bumbled through this first part. I would think this is the hardest part, is just getting started and, getting into the rhythm of it. So how often and does it occur that there is a shift? I mean, that there, you know, and there's agreement, but again, I think it's a very collaborative process, right? Where it's a give and take. We're collaboratively working on this and we're looking together, we're learning together, because it's also a CQI process. It's a continuous quality improvement process. We can look and we can say, you know, that was a great goal. That was a great interim, but you know what? It's not really giving us the data the way that we thought it was going to give us. And so we're going to have to come back and tweak it. And that's what monitoring is for as well. Correct? Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the and in your SOFG manuals, one of the items that that you will self-evaluate yourself on is the statement that is the statement true that the board has not changed their goals or guardrails more than once per year. And that's what we're trying to accomplish here. It could be, so if you're going to make changes, you should do it now before the superintendent develops his strategic plan around the language that you have adopted. And that's where the rubber hits the road in this conversation. You have set your priorities and said, these are the things that we expect to be the highest priorities for how the district is managed, how resources are allocated, so on and so forth. So at the point where you change those priorities, then that is going to open up the entire strategy to be changed as well. And I have a feeling that that is not the direction that this board wants to go.
Correct. So superintendent. So I guess, you know, because SOFG is going to be a conversation that's going to be at every board meeting from now on. So this is us doing our work, and this is us thinking through this process. And so if at the next, I don't know, I don't want to put the board, I don't want to put superintendent on the line, but at a meeting soon that share with us, if you're going to change those interims, then we'd have to come back and we'd have to review those. And then we'd say, but we've adopted these guardrails, right? So we'd have to amend this somehow, that we could do that as part of, I guess as a board meeting, we'd have to put it on there. And is it a new action, you know, a new discussion action? So there isn't any reason why we couldn't do that. I mean, I agree. It's not a Bible. It's not like set in stone. We want to get this right. We want to do this well. But at the same time, we're not going to be on a hamster wheel. We just need to kind of start. We need to kind of be clear so that they can do their work. So superintendent, not to put you on the spot, but if you all have been thinking about that and you have thought about changing some, do you have an idea of when we could have those communicated to us?
I will have it definitely done so that you have time then to look at the monitoring calendar.
Okay.
We have assessments beginning in a couple weeks. That's going to take up a lot of time and energy, but it's not, we started talking the day after that meeting. So, I mean, there was good feedback. Dr. Bowman and I, Dr. Segura and I, we spent some time really kind of knocking that out. So, okay, these are some good adjustments. I don't think it's going to have any impact on your guardrails because I don't think any suggestions you made were with the intention of changing your guardrail. So I would think we will have this out well before any monitoring calendar was brought to you. And again, I understand kind of in my head that the monitoring calendar really needs to be ready by the beginning of June. So I think you can say over the next 2 months, we can definitely get that to you for feedback.
So
does that feel comfortable for the board? Go ahead, Board Member Dominguez.
My mantra, be deliberate, be intentional, and that takes time. If I understand correctly, if I understood Ashley correctly, interims impact the strategic plan. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so
kind of.
Yes. No.
I'd say the guardrails are the biggest issue for us, and the interims are a way for us to simply monitor our work throughout the year so we can come in to talk to you about what we see happening in the district. So I think we'll be all right.
Yeah. So you can move forward.
I don't think you guys made any suggestions that were so heavy that they really impact the work we're planning on doing. The idea of breaking down, disaggregating the data by zone or by student group is not an impact on how we do the work. It simply is just a different way of looking at what data we collect.
Okay. Any other comments?
Sorry, I'm trying to find the interims. They were presented to us and I'm pretty sure we got a document, but is it a Google Doc or is it an email? I was trying to find it so I could. Anyone know?
President, Board Member Gonzalez, excuse me. I'll make sure you get them. We did share them at one point, but I'll make sure you get them again. It was a Google Doc that I think was shared.
Both sets of both sets of interims. Yeah.
Goals and guardrails, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we can, it still sounds like we can still get there. I like the confidence from the superintendent that it's not going to impact our goals and our guardrails in that sense, but it was good information. And I just will say, as I thought that the information that we gave, so for example, like the data sets by zones, I just really felt like it would just give them ideas of how to present the status of that particular goal or guardrail. I didn't really think they had to change their interim in that, but I think we can get there. And I think the things that we requested about more specificity was just that it would come in the way that they would report it out. I didn't see how it would change, what we were looking at, just sort of a broad interim. So I thought we gave them some really good ideas of how to present that data or to present the information. So if superintendent is feeling confident about, being able to do that and bring that back to us, we'll pick it up again at our next conversation. And we'll continue to proceed with where we are on the work and going forward. Ashley, is there any other parting comments you want to make at this point? We're good? Okay, love your green. She's got her St. Patrick green on. That's good. Okay, so our next item up is a report on the goals, guardrails, and strategic plan as it aligns to student outcomes. And this is from Superintendent Elder.
Well, I think probably there's not much I can add to the conversation that we just had, other than we have been looking at the interims and the goals, and Richard and his team are really working on some of the processes that will have to be put in place, and how we're going to do some of the data reporting. Probably more importantly, I think right now is really some of the work we're doing around the strategic plan. I'm sorry I was late tonight, but I was at the advisory committee, and it's a good thing I went because they had some really pointed feedback. It was really productive and helpful. And it was good that I heard it. And I think it's important that we really, as we engage with the community in this work, that I'm present. And so I appreciate you all allowing me to have that opportunity to be there and just be a part of it. I didn't speak much. I couldn't help myself once. I had to jump in, but overall, it was good feedback. And some of the people were having a hard time, getting in on it because they were, I think one of them was still in Santa Fe. And so was sending comments on chat. And it was good to see that those comments were being picked up and included in the notes. But we are in progress to continue complete the strategic plan either by late April, early May, which was the deadline we had originally proposed. And we're really getting far along. We're into the work now of our initiatives and trying to sort of align what resources we have and see what we can do in the coming years. One of the things that the advisory committee had to be reminded of tonight, and I think it's important, is it's a 5-year plan. And everybody's real excited to get started. But one of the things is you start to look at the list of initiatives, you begin to realize we can't do everything year one. It just isn't possible. There's too much. And so it is going to be a step-by-step process. I do appreciate Attuned because they keep reminding us of that too, because I think if you guys have pointed out in the past, APS and traditionally sort of jumped at things and said, oh, we got to do that, we got to do that, we got to do this, we got to do that. And as a result, we've done a lot of things, but maybe we haven't been great at anything. So this process is reminding us it's going to take time to make a change in the machine. But it was a good, productive meeting, and I feel good about where we are. in terms of that. And I appreciate the comments along the student outcome focused governance and our role in that and what we have to bring back to continue the work as we work with you.
Great. Any questions for the superintendent? Go ahead. Amber.
It would help me as I grapple with all of this work to have more. I'd appreciate some more substantive reports from what kinds of things you've heard from the committee. You know, it doesn't have to be ours. We don't have to own it, but I think that the more it helps give us a context of what you're hearing from the community, what the thoughts are, and how you're taking that and thinking about where we go with it with your knowledge base, it would be very helpful.
Appreciate that. I will have to think about how to do that because it's you all selected a wide spectrum of committee members, which is great because we're getting different opinions shared. So there was some discussion tonight, for example, around rigorous instruction. And there was some concern about what does that look like? What would the curriculum look like? Would that be canned curriculum? And on the other side, there was discussion about, but it's good to have a concept of scope and sequence. It's a good idea to have standards that are being met. So it was this nice balance of commentary that was being laid out that we can take into our planning, and Attune needed to hear that too, because they've been doing a lot of focus groups. One of the, they've been out and met with teachers, principals, community members. They had a couple meetings with Native American students because that was a group we really felt we needed to get into and really hear from. And they provided really valuable, strong feedback. And so all that's sort of coming out, and this advisory committee needed to hear that and sort of recognize that and kind of take a different perspective for some of them. So it's a blending of ideas. I'll try to take notes that maybe I don't want to, some of it's done, you know, I mean, these are people talking in confidence to other people, so I don't want to go too far, but I think in generalities, I can speak to what we did. So I'll try to do more of that as we move forward, as we meet with them. I don't think I meet with them for another month.
It would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? I just have a question, Superintendent. Has the participation been great or good on, how would you rate the participation on the advisory committee? Has it been
It
good?
had been good. Tonight was light. We didn't have I would encourage you, if you're talking to your advisory committee members, if you encourage them to attend. I think tonight was, for a lot of reasons, people had a difficult time. And I don't know if it's because the legislative session's coming to an end or what, but tonight was lighter than previous meetings.
Okay.
We still had a good number there. It just was lighter.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
I'm heartened to hear that Native American voices are taken into account because that's what makes us so unique. And I know people get frustrated about, I've heard this up in Santa Fe too. But I've heard it in this context. New Mexico likes to do things differently. And, yeah, because we are a multicultural state, and somehow I feel like that comment dismisses the history behind, ELLs, Hispanics, Native American voices. Yeah, we're fairly new to the conversation, and we're going to stake our claim. So we are different.
Thank you. Well, in APS, just add the refugee community in that too. That makes us ultimately unique in the state. It's just with the number of refugees that we also have to support as a district. All right. All right. Any comments? No, good. All right. So moving right along, our next item is special issues, and this is a government affairs update. Oh boy, we're getting close, and we get to welcome our newest person, Jessica Martinez, as our policy analyst for. So welcome, Jessica. Welcome to the party, Dr. Escobedo and TC Reiser. You've got the floor.
Madam President, members of the board, you stole our thunder because we wanted to.
Well, I couldn't help myself. Okay.
Cat's out of the bag. Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Elder, thank you very much for the warm welcome. I'm especially grateful for the warm welcome that I've received from the Board Services Department and members of the legislative team, and you all. So thank you very much. I'm a 22-year educator in Albuquerque Public Schools. I'm a product of APS myself. I'm for 9 more weeks the parent of an APS senior. So the countdown is on, but yeah, I'm excited to get started in support of the work of the board and our district administration. My first day on the job has been fantastic. We spent the morning up in Santa Fe at Senate Ed with Superintendent Elder for the confirmation of PED Secretary Arsenio Romero. So it's been a great day. I'm excited to get started.
Welcome aboard.
So Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Elder, we have 2.5 days to go. The budget passed the Senate. I think it was a Monday or Tuesday, and the House of Representatives just this afternoon heard and accepted all of the Senate amendments, which is a little controversial because it raised the spending by about 1%. So now we await the governor's action. It does include a 6% salary increase. And so I think last time we came, it was 5%. They added an extra percentage. And I did want to remind you that the Senate did include that averaging language. So that was not removed. And we talked about that to you. The language in the bill did remove the requirement of House Bill 130 being signed into law. It has passed both houses. But it is on the governor's desk. So that's the bill that increases instructional hours to 1,140. So in your update, there is some language provisions that we wanted to call out to you, including that averaging language. But one thing we wanted to update you on is we did hear some indication of future revenues today on oil and gas. And so this year's revenue, and it's been interesting because they usually do a revenue update several times during the session, but we noticed they did not do a second. And so this year's revenue, just to give you an indication, was based off of 85 active oil rigs. There are 106 operating, and you know the price of gas. So we're going to see some record revenue for a little bit.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Elder, we also want to tell you a little bit about HB4. This is a voting rights bill. This bill has a clause in it that prohibits schools to have professional development or school on an election day. This does not go into effect until 2024. So we can work on that next legislative session, and we have discussed it with our calendar committee. HB 126, the graduation requirement bill, and this has been stalled on the Senate floor for about a week. We will be watching it over the next 2.5 days to see if there's movement in the last days. HB 127, which is minimum salaries for our educational assistants, moving them to 25,000, did pass the Senate unanimously and is waiting on the governor for governor's action. HB 130, this is the increase of instructional hours to 1140, did pass the Senate, so it's passed the House and the Senate. They did an amendment in the Senate for professional development requirement for high school and middle school teachers to be 30 hours of professional work included in the 1140. The calendars that we are proposing as a district do accommodate this amendment. And HB 199 is the increase of the school at-risk, fine arts, and administrative salaries that passed the Senate and is awaiting the governor's signature. Yay.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Elder. So finally, just a few more bills. SB 3, which changes the family income index, and we have several schools who received those funds. Those changes did pass and is waiting for the governor's signature, along with the universal lunch program. And so we are working with Chief Operating Officer Dr. Blakey and the governor's office on a meeting around the rulemaking and implementation of this bill. And so I know some of the governor's office reached out to several of you as well. SB 131, which is the capital outlay offset bill, that's been stuck on the House floor. So we've seen bills stuck on each side for a few days, and we are hopeful. We had some conversations today that will get moving. A surprise, or perhaps, Senate Joint Resolution 1, which is the constitutional amendment, that would go to voters to decide to go back to the State Board of Education in 2024. That again is stalled on the House floor because they know that'll take about a 3-hour debate. So we're going to see if that gets heard tonight or tomorrow. We've also included some information in your packet on the language of the budget. We will be bringing you a list of capital outlay that is signed into law, and then we need to do a process with you to recommend to you those appropriations that we want to accept. Again, this is a part of your offset, the district's offset of capital. We did receive a record $13.4 million in appropriations for our schools this year. And so some of our schools that are seeking significant funds, they can carry over those funds to next year to kind of use them with future appropriations. So if they're trying to get, multi-million-dollar appropriation. So we'll work on that and continue to improve processes. And we stand for questions on these and any bills they have. Or Jessica's first day.
We'll give them all to Jessica. Any questions? Go ahead, Barbara.
So can you explain again what has ended up in 130 for professional development time?
Yeah.
What's included, what's not?
So the only change that was made was that 30 hours for middle and high school can be within the 1140, where the elementary is 60 hours within. The actual requirements of the language didn't change, basically moving conferences out of the instructional hours and into professional development time. That's the main, and defining everything.
So basically, because there's so much embedded already in middle and high school, professional development time, is that why there's the difference between?
Yes, and even before we saw the amendment, I had been working with the calendar committee and we had already met those requirements before the amendment even. We saw it, so.
Really appreciate that. Just one thing that made me really sad today was that the family leave bill went down. I can't believe that it passed through the Senate. I can't believe it died in the House. And, going back to why our kids are absent, a lot of it is because of family situations where the primary adult can't stay home. And it impacts our kids' attendance hugely, not to mention just how infants do when family can stay home with them. And it sets them off on a much better course. So I was heartbroken with that one.
Go ahead.
Which one was SB 131? I didn't get what that one was.
That is our capital outlay offset bill.
Okay.
So that relieves us of $37 million in our debt. But then we just increased it by 13.4 million.
Thank you.
We did?
Well, so that the offset is for those, I'm sorry, Madam President and Board Member Dominguez, the offset has been,
Relieved us of the 38 million.
yes, but we got there because of the capital appropriations that we received. We have to pay that offset every year.
So it's sitting.
But it's stuck. It's stuck, right?
It's on the House floor. There's some movement. It was discussed in caucus, so I think they're trying to move it forward. There's a couple of bills that they're trying to trade on either side for, and so we've been just patiently waiting, but encouraging. We may be there late tomorrow night, shepherding that through.
And I'll just say, thank you, oil and gas. Thank you for our kids for education. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And good thing for businesses with the family leave. Too many of them went out of business to begin with. So I know just from having my whole family have businesses that would have just been extraordinarily difficult for them, as many other businesses would have suffered tremendously as well.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Thank you, and happy first day. Get to be there late tomorrow night too. Isn't that exciting? All right, so announcement of upcoming board meetings. The next Board of Education meeting will be held on Wednesday, April 5th, 2023 at 5 p.m. in the John Milne Community Boardroom of the Allison Bruce King Educational Complex, 6400 Uptown Boulevard Northeast, or virtually at www.aps.edu. And the next special Board of Education meeting will be held on Wednesday, March 29th, 2023 at 5:15 p.m. or immediately following the Finance Committee meeting, also here, John Milne, and also online. The next item is consideration for approval to adjourn to executive session pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, NMSA 1978 10-15-1 H2 for the purpose of discussing a limited personnel matter regarding the superintendent's evaluation. Do I have a motion, please?
I move to adjourn to executive session pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, NMSA 1978, Section 10-15-1 H2 for the purpose of discussing an unlimited personnel matter regarding the superintendent's evaluation.
I'll second. This is Barbara.
Ms. Kay, may I have a roll call, please?
Peggy Mueller, Aragon,
No.
Danielle Gonzalez,
Yes.
Barbara Peterson,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez,
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes.